Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's review is Delta Green Control Group for Delta Green the Role-Playing Game by Octane Publishing. In this video I will be reviewing the first scenario of the four contained within, BLACKSAT. Okay, first a bit of history. Released in 2019, Control Group is a 180-page hardback book that is also available in PDF format. It was one of the funded stretch goals from 2015's successful Kickstarter. Right, to the cover. Here we have a magnificently creepy scene by Dennis the Twiller, made just that bit worse by the inclusion of the teddy bear, and the quality of the book is absolutely in keeping with the other hardbacks that Octane Publishing have released thus far. On to the inside. There'll be spoilers from this point on, so stop watching now if you intend to play this. First up we have the introduction, where it is explained that there are four scenarios: BLACKSAT, Night Visions, Sick Again, and Wormwood Arena. They've been designed so that the survivors of the first three come together as a group to play out the events of the fourth scenario. Each of the operations play out in specific years for the purpose of timing, though, as always with these things, this can be changed to fit your game. The first scenario is BLACKSAT. It involves 5 astronauts who've been assigned a classified mission. It stresses that they are not yet members of Delta Green. They're tasked with repairing a secret spy satellite with the codename BLACKSAT. Unbeknownst to them, it was built with unnatural components coming from the Majestic program and they cannot repair it. They need to take 2 passengers who are clearly not fit for spaceflight, not to repair it but to destroy it using hypergeometry. The first thing it details are the NASA personnel: Lieutenant Colonel Michael Spey, the mission commander from the US Air Force, Major Dirk McMillan, a pilot from the US Air Force, Captain Dan Hamlet, a mission specialist from the US Air Force, Lieutenant Commander Luke Belton, a mission specialist from the US Navy, and Dr. Deirdre Turner, the flight surgeon. Each player should pick a character. The year is 2010 and they've been training for a satellite repair mission for the last 18 months, though the indications are that this is a secret mission. Each one of them receives a phone call from Paul Scalzo, a NASA administrator, asking them to meet at 0800 at the Launch Control Center, Conference Room C, giving no indications of what the mission is about. The characters have been together for over a year, so are really familiar with each other. When they arrive, they see Scalzo talking to Colonel Aaron Woolrich, a US Air Force officer that they all know, though he has never directly interacted with them. They see 2 men sitting miserably in the room with jumpsuits on. One is chubby and looks ill, and the other is rake thin with a deeply lined face and thinning white hair. Scalzo will introduce Colonel Woolrich, who will greet them warmly with a crisp handshake. The strangers are introduced as Bruce Weintraub and Pierce O'Neill, explaining that they are cleared to discuss BLACKSAT. Colonel Woolrich will confirm with each of them that they agreed to the mission months ago and that they still agree now. He explains that there is a US defence satellite, BLACKSAT, that is in need of repair and recalibration, and they are to escort Weintraub or O'Neill as an alternative on a covert shuttle flight so that they can do this. It's 523 kilometres above the Earth and moving at 7 kilometres per second. Commander McMillan's mission is to synchronise their orbits so that Belton and Hamlet can escort either of the 2 men to the satellite. It can't be brought into the shuttle bay or repaired via remote arm. The technology and techniques are classified separately from BLACKSAT, which the astronauts don't have clearance for. There'll be 3 manned maneuvering units, or MMUs, to allow for one of the civilians to be escorted there safely. The repair begins in 5 days, with liftoff being in just 48 hours. Woolrich will then field any questions. It gives details here on some of the ones that they could ask. If they ask what BLACKSAT does, they'll be told it is a deniable anti-satellite weapon platform, which allows them to take out of orbit anything the Russians or Chinese put there by degrading its orbit, functionality and communications, stressing that it is not dangerous to humans or anything being flown by a human. If asked if Weintraub and O'Neill are ready for the mission, they'll be told that they are the only ones who can fix BLACKSAT, though they are not astronauts. They also have no flight training. Weintraub will mention that O'Neill is the only one who understands the Cortex differentials, something none of the astronauts have ever heard of. Woolrich will cut in saying that only Adakite clearance is allowed that information. They'll be told that Weintraub and O'Neill are literally 50% of everyone on Earth qualified to conduct the repairs. The 2 of them and Woolrich will begin discussing the linear decay arcs and Baryon integration and the like with no explanation. The repairs should only take around 30 minutes. At this point it is advised that the players should take another look at their bonds and motivations, and maybe add 1 or 2 motivations. This will give them the chance to speak with a loved one or something similar. Players could begin to look into the background of their 2 civilian passengers, as well as Woolrich should they require to. With the right roles, Woolrich's career is an open book up until 1989 when it became highly classified. Weintraub was an undergraduate of Harvey Mudd College in 1993 and was a mathematician who graduated from Harvard with his thesis on paradimensional matrix collapse functions. After 1998 he vanished. With the right roles it can be determined that he moved on to 7, Maryland, near the HQ of the NSA. Anyone well versed in mathematics can determine that his thesis involves some strange insights into the indicacity of numbers and how they can indicate what they are attached to, with the suggestion that there may be ancillary data unrelated to measured traits. It's very obscure and has indications that the thingness of things can be altered through mathematical description. O'Neill turns up a blank unless they can get a good photograph of him, which he is shy about doing. If someone trained in computers runs his image through an image-based search engine, it brings up a photograph of him in the background at a security conference entitled Black Hats and Black Ops, where he is identified as Albert Canisinger. Searching for Canisinger turns up that someone with his name was arrested in 1985 for attempting to burgle a Hindu temple. If asked about this, he stonewalls them, though this may change later on. The characters can also pick up on the gossip on the base. It gives a number of things that they can find out, including BLACKSAT, the Space Defence Initiative, and even weirdness in orbit. It then moves on to the physicals of Weintraub and O'Neill. The files are filled with redacted information, omissions and deletions, and they both show nausea resistance on the Vomit Comet jetliner. O'Neill is deemed to be in decent physical shape for a casual smoker in his 60s, though he will be described as the worst specimen that NASA has ever examined. His blood pressure is alarmingly high, his lungs are awful, and there is a 50% chance that the blood vessels in his eyes will rupture on takeoff. He has a 1 in 10 chance of having a heart attack and a 1 in 5 chance of having a massive embolism. Someone trained in medicine will notice that he has electrical scarring on his left side, and his brain activity is more intense than as usual, having an almost rhythm to it. He would claim that the scarring is from a work accident in his youth. If questioned about his brain activity, he will smile, saying that the BLACKSAT and related projects has regulated his neural activity. If asked about Albert Canisinger, he will finally confess, saying that it was a name he had hoped to escape. His actual name is Alfred Canisinger. Albert was his twin brother, whose security clearances he took advantage of. If it is investigated on the internet, it can be confirmed as the truth. O'Neill's reign as the worst specimen NASA have ever seen is soon taken over by Weintraub. He has hypertension, but is carrying 40 extra pounds, and has throat scarring typical of acid reflux. His asthma is bad, though his lower spine is in bad shape due to a sedentary lifestyle. Anyone passing a medicine roll will notice that his brainwave activity is similar to O'Neill's. Questioning Weintraub is interesting due to his social immaturity and an odd moments of petulance, though he is eager to be friends. He is intimidated by the astronauts. He explains that he has always been a genius with abstractions and an only child, which encouraged him to hone his intellect with camps and math clubs. The prospect of going into space both thrills and terrifies him. He has a deep affection for O'Neill, who he often calls Al Canisinger, forgetting his pseudonym. He's fairly easy to question and will answer a broad raft of questions, depending on how successful the persuade roll is. He will explain his brave waves with a mouthful of pseudo-mathematical technobabble. With regard to Ulrich, he will say that he has known him a while, but he doesn't really know him. He will let slip that they met on something called Mustang before correcting himself. He will talk about how the Cortus equations changed his life. He will talk about Project Adakite and then a facility in Wyoming called Mustang Fields. At this point, he is assuming that as the astronauts have BLACKSAT clearance, he's free to talk about this. He will talk about the white paper that someone called Stephen Cortus left behind, and they are the foundation of what BLACKSAT does. This topic excites him, and he will talk openly about paradimensionality and speculative section of tensegrity waveforms. It even includes a table where the GM can roll random technobabble, which is a nice touch. It then moves on to training Weintraub and O'Neill. They need to be trained by 2 of the astronauts in EVA or extravehicular activity and how to use an MMU, essentially how to spacewalk in a spacesuit. They're difficult to move in, and Weintraub in particular starts panicking, mentioning shortness of breath. This is another opportunity to get information out of them. If they take the hard line with O'Neill and accuse him and Colonel Woolrich of putting Weintraub in serious danger, they will be the first that is chosen to die in space. More on that later. He will, however, say that they were both essentially prisoners at Mustang Fields, and that Woolrich is an idiot who is messing with things he doesn't understand, and that BLACKSAT is dangerous, whatever it is. He would then catch himself and say no more. If they do the same with Weintraub, he is akin to kicking a puppy. If he is successfully persuaded, he will break down, sobbing and hyperventilating. He will admit that fear of space is only part of the problem, and that what is waiting up there is the other part. He will then say no more. If the soft touch is used with O'Neill, perhaps using Weintraub's safety as a talking point, he will ask whoever is questioning him what Weintraub's chances of surviving are, and will admit that the mission is dangerous and that someone may die. Similarly, if the soft touch is used with Weintraub, he will babble about Woolrich being honourable. At this stage, Dr. Turner is being asked to be responsible for the pair of them, and the others may have questions about their mental stability. If they go to Woolrich, he will listen carefully, stating that he will present their concerns, though not mention to whom, and then they will be told that the mission will be proceeding as normal, with Woolrich taking full responsibility. We then move on to the all-important launch day. It cuts to Spey and Macmillan in the cockpit, with the others crammed into mid-deck. Everyone is dressed in the orange Advanced Crew Escape Suit, or ACES, though they are more commonly referred to as a pumpkin suit. Weintraub will weep as the countdown proceeds, with O'Neill comforting him. It then plays out second by second, which should be played similar to how you see it done in real life, full of drama and tension. All is going as normal until T plus 12 seconds, when Weintraub starts gasping and clawing at his eyes. At T plus 19 seconds, his heart rate and blood pressure have leapt dangerously and he starts screaming. At T plus 48 seconds, he's gone into cardiac arrest, and at T plus 57 seconds, he is still alive if anyone unstrapped themselves and performed CPR on him, though he is blind due to the blood vessels bursting in his eyes. At T plus 4 minutes, he will either be dead or ready to go into cardiac arrest again. He could be saved with an anti-strepolase injection, though he will be catatonic and blinded and useless for the rest of the mission. At T plus 8 minutes 30 seconds, thrust ends and microgravity is experienced. All the while, communications are cutting in and out with ground control, wanting to know what is going on. This is accompanied by this painting of what I assume is Weintraub in a spacesuit filled with vomit, though if this is supposed to mirror the scenario, I would have expected the suit would be orange. At this point, the handler is encouraged to give the players a chance to catch their breath while their characters take stock and assess the situation. They can even shout at Woolrich, who takes whatever they throw at him, as he still needs them, so plays nice. In the event that Weintraub has died, the protocol is to store the body in a spacesuit until they return to Earth. If he is alive, he is completely debilitated and will be sobbing and unresponsive. The next step is to rendezvous with BLACKSAT, which will take 48 hours of piloting and preparation. At this point, Belton and Hamlet are scheduled to check the 3 MMUs, and though they are unaware, Woolrich has rigged them with kill switches to remotely terminate an astronaut so O'Neill can unwind their consciousness to repair BLACKSAT. More on that in a bit. They get a craft electronic roll with a plus 20% bonus. If they fail, they notice that an unknown device has been added to each MMU that's joined to the Primary Life Support System, or PLSS. If they succeed, they can access it and discover it is wired to a receiver. Woolrich will say that it's an enhanced radio rig that allows ground control to better monitor their status. If they're smart and suspicious, they may even try to disable the kill switches, even if they don't know what they are. There are a number of ways listed here that have varying results, from disabling the radios, disconnecting it from the oxygen feed, disconnecting it from the radio and actually taking the MMU apart, which will render it useless. This way they can discover a tiny ampule of gas connected to the oxygen feed. If they release it into the shuttle's atmosphere, they quickly, and perhaps fatally, discover that it is nerve gas. In the meantime, various conversations can be had. If Weintraub died, Woolrich will call him a hero who died for his country. However, he stresses that the mission must be completed. Scalzo doesn't have clearance, so he is unavailable. Weintraub, if he is still alive, asks to be released from the chair restraint and then immediately attempts to get the escape hatch open. It is, of course, locked. If he is spoken to, he will produce more technobabble, and if calmed down, he will ask to speak to O'Neill. If that is agreed, Weintraub will implore Al to kill him and let these people live, refusing to speak further. Woolrich will say that Weintraub is delirious. O'Neill at this point may open up about BLACKSAT over the next few days. If Turner tried to save Weintraub, he's willing to talk, otherwise persuade checks are required. He will insist on the microphones being shut off. He will generally say that Weintraub is delirious given the catastrophic suffering he has endured. He will only admit the truth if previous events have convinced him otherwise. If this falls into place, he will admit that the work on BLACKSAT will most likely require power that can only be provided by unspooling a human consciousness. The devices in the spacesuits are for just this purpose, to kill an astronaut in order to provide hypergeometric energy that, in conjunction with the ritual he will perform, neutralise the thing in the heart of BLACKSAT. This is the truth of the mission, not to repair it, but to deactivate it. If they've not discovered this, he will show the astronauts the kill switches, saying it was too much to ask him to do. If pressed about unspooling a human consciousness, he will explain that it was the reason for human sacrifices in old-time magic, further explaining that the body is a machine that plays the consciousness like a record player plays a record. If the record player is turned off, the record remains. Thus, when the body is shut down, consciousness remains, and if that mind can be unspooled, a tremendous energy is released and can be used. If he is asked about his background, he will admit that he is an occultist of modest but genuine power. He will admit that every 7 years he undergoes a period of spectacular extrasensory visions. When a government program started up experimenting with something called hypergeometry, he sensed it and made contact, and was inducted into Project Red Light, a study that tried to penetrate mathematics from exotic sources. He will explain that hypergeometry is observer-dependent, and that consciousness is mathematics, further explaining that a witch from the late 1600s called Keziah Mason studied hypergeometry under the term spells. He stresses that hypergeometry has been encoded into folklore for centuries. With regard to Adakite, he will explain that he laboured in Mustang Fields for many years, not trusted to leave the premises without escort. He was attached to BLACKSAT when it stopped working in 2008. BLACKSAT itself is an object with hypergeometric gravity actuators that can alter gravitational interactions with other nations' spy satellites, though he insists it's not dangerous to the shuttle. At this stage, the astronauts have heard enough. They may abandon the mission, though the handler may encourage them to think through the lens of their character. They need to remember that this is still considered a mission, and Woolrich would no doubt make sure it was recorded as dereliction of orders, which would threaten their careers and with all probability cover it up given its nature. The astronauts don't know this, but the ground crew can remotely disable the shuttle, leaving it drifting in space until they follow orders. The astronauts can work their way through the shuttle's electronics to find this disabling feature, but it is difficult. Next, we move on to the spacewalk, though this may not actually happen given the previous revelations. The last time BLACKSAT was repaired was in 1992. It goes through the procedure that astronauts have to go through in order to prepare for the walk, including a pre-breathe in the airlock while the pressure is reduced and the shuttle manoeuvres into place. Once they are ready, Spey must pilot the shuttle to an orbit that matches the satellite. It's fairly unassuming, being an octagonal device with solar panels. When all is ready, the 3MMU crew can exit into space. They need to be piloted towards BLACKSAT, which is difficult, and it's at this point that O'Neill gets nervous, saying he senses a presence. In the event of some fairly spectacular failures, all three of them can lose connection to their tether and start drifting in space. While the rest of the crew are watching, they see something move across the viewports, what looks like a collection of angles that distort the stars. If this is communicated to O'Neill, he will cry out in horror and fascination that it is a derivative and that they were right. He tells them not to look at it as their attention brings it firmly into 3 dimensions. When they see a derivative, it triggers sand loss and gains those that lose it +1 in the unnatural skill. The derivatives move through the metal of the shuttle and inside. They can witness it move through Turner's locker, and as it passes through the name label, the writing distorts to a grey smear. O'Neill, or Weintraub if he is alive, can explain the theory behind what a derivative is. It was proposed by Stephen Cortis in his white paper that consciousness is a coiled energy with thought-formed shapes, and that spontaneous consciousnesses could be drawn out by the space shapes formed by the Cortis equations like those on BLACKSAT, and that contemplating them could make them coherent. They can explain that they are not alive, but can influence matter, are self-willed, and can survive in the void of space. It's theorised that spirits and demons summoned by rituals and spells of ancient civilizations could be derivatives. Back at BLACKSAT, Belton or Hamlet could realise that they're not getting oxygen via their tether. They need to pass rolls to rig up O'Neill, and if they fail, he starts drifting. At this point, there is a number of variables at play as to who could be there, but the likelihood is that O'Neill will decide who to kill to shut down BLACKSAT. This will be based on previous interactions with them. Should he be indecisive, Woolrich takes the decision out of his hands by triggering Hamlet's suit, which in all likelihood will kill him. This is of course sand draining for those witnessing it. O'Neill will start gesticulating and chanting in an unknown language. Whether he is successful is up to the handler. Next we have some information on the derivatives. They are alien and hungry for patterns that can allow them to form into space. Written text can nourish them, as can the patterns that form in human minds, slowly reducing synaptic patterns, then bones, cells and organs, and finally the patterns contained in DNA. If they're on board the ship when it enters the atmosphere, gravity will smooth them into nothingness, though the astronauts won't know this. The touch of a derivative is bad, with them causing D10 damage, though they can be repelled with a power ×5 roll. They also simultaneously sap int points and of course SAN. It covers what should happen when the derivatives breach the shuttle. They can't be communicated with, and hiding from them is difficult given the cramped quarters. If Weintraub is discovered by them, they will meld with him, turning him into a slurry of blood and tissue. Fleeing into the airlock is also an option, though it can only hold 3 astronauts. Whatever they do, they witness the derivative dividing into 2, and those actually at BLACKSAT will witness one emerge from inside it. Woolrich orders Spey and Macmillan to immediately disengage and commence the burn back to orbit, leaving O'Neill, Hamlet and Belton behind in space. If Spey disconnects the tether, Hamlet and Belton have a chance of getting back on board before the cargo doors close. O'Neill is oblivious as he is still chanting and thrashing. Trying to save him as well as a death sentence. It gives a number of options on how to deal with who could be left behind. If Spey refuses, each astronaut by the satellite gets a chance to get on board before the one that emerged from BLACKSAT. After they make these attempts, ground control will disengage the tether remotely, though this can be prevented by Spey or Macmillan. At this point, there are 2 derivatives in mid-deck that move out to the airlock or flight deck if no victims are visible. Once the airlock and cargo bay are closed, Spey and Macmillan can attempt to manoeuvre away from BLACKSAT. A success means that they begin heading to Earth, though the derivatives are still there. It suggests making everyone have an experience with them. this will become important later in the book. On a fail, the shuttle burns too hard and it will take conrolls to stay conscious on their return, though they should be conscious again before it makes its final plunge. As previously mentioned, the derivatives will be destroyed on re-entry, but the astronauts have no way of knowing this. We then move on to the aftermath of what happened. The return is explained away as a major malfunction on the shuttle, and injuries and death are covered by this. The surviving pilots have their careers wrecked and have to attend hearings that pin the blame on Scalzo and Woolrich, and any disorders that they pick up will in all likelihood focus on space or even flight. Scalzo is disgraced and becomes the scapegoat, retiring from NASA and taking a desk job. If contacted by other survivors, he tells them that they gave him this job and threatened his kids, telling them that they should forget everything and move on. Woolrich is relieved from command. He is resentful and talks about being sold out, telling them that he will have some information for them in a few days. However, he dies in a car accident near his home shortly after. If Weintraub or O'Neill told them where Mustang Fields was, the survivors can visit there but would be turned away by extremely well-armed but polite guards. However, as it turns out, the programme is watching them. If they move on to other careers and don't try to make their experiences with the unnatural public, they'll be approached in a year or two by a case officer who will tell them that they have an idea of what the survivors encountered and that they should never have been put in that position, and that now that they've seen the unnatural, they understand the danger it presents, stressing that it was only a glimpse that they have witnessed. They tell them that they can help save the world from it, but it will mean undeniably ugly work. Do they want in? Lastly, we have information on BLACKSAT clearance, the shuttle's abort modes and the pre-gen characters. As of me putting together this review, I am running this scenario from my home group. I found the narrative to be incredibly tight and the story follows a very set-in-stone timescale, which I thought would make my players feel like they were being railroaded. However, it serves to focus them on the task ahead and is absolutely in keeping with the strict discipline that those that have served in the armed forces will be used to. I found Weintraub and O'Neill to be interestingly constructed, almost sympathetic characters with very different personalities, and they do well in serving the secrets of Delta Green in a very digestible tidbits. I did feel like Scalzo and Woolrich could have been fleshed out a bit more, given the important role that they play in proceedings, and as with other Delta Green products, some portraits to use as an easy reference would have served to make a distinction between each of the team clearer, as often became a bit blurred. I did feel like more could have been given to the NASA training facility itself, a map for example, as well as other bits of training that the two hapless cultists would have to endure. As it happens, I personally don't know the details of what training an astronaut has to go through, so I had to largely wing it mid-game. Also, the information that Weintraub and O'Neill deliver to the players is so spread out across the scenario that it felt like a lot of flicking back and forth was needed in order to make sure I wasn't repeating myself, and the fact that there was only one actual piece of art was a bit disappointing, as I didn't feel like there was an awful lot to show the players. A picture of BLACKSAT itself would have been evocative, as well as perhaps one of the derivatives. The pre-gens are nicely done and with interesting links to each other, and I do feel like the ending is satisfying and exciting, and it should be a pretty good way of showing your party a glimpse of what Delta Green is about. I do believe that if you're looking to immerse your gaming group into the doomed world of Delta Green, Control Group's BLACKSAT is a pretty decent place to start. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. The next video in this series will be Night Visions, so until then, if you enjoyed this review please make sure to hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos. Also, if you're interested in buying this product, I've put some links below. Lastly, if you like what I produce here, then maybe think about supporting me on Patreon. Bud out.